Well, hello, and thank you all for joining me for another episode of the Professional Pricing Society podcast. My name is Terrence, and I will be your host for the discussion today. And we do have a dynamic duo with us, two amazing guests joining us. But before we introduce them, I would like to remind everyone that we are going to be in Dallas, Texas, this upcoming May, okay? The 34th Annual Spring Pricing and Workshop Conference will be held during the first week of May, the 2nd through the 5th. If you haven't already done so, I want to encourage you all to learn more about the conference and register now to catch the early bird discount by visiting our website, pricingsociety.com. Now, our amazing speakers today are going to be Jason McDannold and Yale Kwon. Both of them lead private equity commercial transformation practices at a company called AlixPartners. Jason McDannold is the partner and managing director with 25 years of experience delivering EBITDA improvements in tech, telecom, and service entities as an executive leader and as an advisor. Yale Kwon is a director with 20 plus years of consulting and industry experience in high tech, media, and telecommunications. They will be talking with us about how to grow your top line in a down market. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Great, Terrence.
Hey,
Thanks for
Terrence.
having me on.
Good. I'm really glad and excited to have you all for today's conversation. I don't want to waste too much time. I want to go ahead and just jump right into it with you all. You recently wrote an article called "How to Grow Your Top Line in a Down Market." Now, this is a very necessary article, I would say. Okay, so what led you all to write this piece together?
That's a great question, Terrence. And thanks for having us on, by the way. We've seen over the last 18 months a real uptick in clients who've come to us who are struggling through, the current uncertainties and market disruptions. And as a firm, AlixPartners, we really focus on helping private equity portfolio clients and other organizations really achieve meaningful impacts to their performance. And often it is when they face disruptions, either market disruption, maybe they're going through a merger or an acquisition, maybe it's a carve out. But really recently we've seen this real uptick. And just a quick recap of what's happening, you're seeing a lot of economic turbulence. Free money is drying up as the rates are going up. There's a lot of competitive disruption. A lot of companies now are accelerating their adoption of advanced digital tool sets and even AI in a very practical way to drive impact. And so a lot of our clients are facing this. And in fact, they're also hitting changes in customer demand. Customer dynamics are changing with this volatile market that we're in. And so we're seeing a lot of companies, especially in tech, media, telecom, facing this point where they've grown over the last several years at any cost. They have bloated G&A structures. They've got a lot of cost on hand, and they're not quite sure how to navigate this. And so, in fact, beyond our anecdotal experience, we're also looking at the data that came out of our recent disruption survey. So AlixPartners every year does this survey of about 3,000 CEOs, and about 75% of them are anxious about adapting fast enough because things are changing right now. And 85% struggle with where to start. So bottom line, Yale and I found that with our teams, we were seeing a trend emerge over the last year or so where winning companies were coming to us with kind of a different mindset. Rather than just how do we cut costs, they're much more open to talking about how do we turn this into an opportunity? How do we actually enhance competitive advantage? And most importantly, what are the tactical steps we can take right now to stay resilient as we deal with this disruption? And so over the course of the last year and a half or so, we've been building up this playbook with really dozens of engagements. And so that inspired us to say, you know what, there's something here. The secret sauce just isn't bringing good analytics, but it's about, although they are important, the really key thing here is execution, getting these leadership teams to drive real tactical change. And we thought, let's write an article about this and share our findings.
Okay, it's a great background and synopsis of the reason why this was kind of brought about. Where should they look,
Yeah.
regarding this?
Yeah, that's where now we get tactical, and that's a great question. I think, often when we deal with a client in this kind of situation, we do a quick strike, and that's when we take about 5 weeks and we just do a full body scan of the company. We look at all the opportunities, we collaborate closely with leadership, and we find, what are all the cost out opportunities that we have. And often when an organization brings us in, because the engagement is framed that way, especially in this environment, a lot of companies are saying, gosh, we got to cut G&A costs. We got to fix our third-party spend. We have to fix our supply chain. We need help right now to enhance EBITDA. So when the project's framed up like that, guess what happens? The head of sales will say, hands off my sales org. Don't touch my sales team. Don't you dare talk about, reducing staff or
Sure.
changing, we can't afford any disruption in revenue, and everybody gets scared. Same thing with the head of marketing, head of pricing, a lot of pushback because they think we're just coming in to just swing an axe. Now, that's when we start what do we look at specifically? What do we sort of target to drive real change? And what we found is that there are plenty of opportunities on the commercial side to drive tactical and meaningful improvements in operational effectiveness, real improvements in top line in, say, 1 to 2 quarters. So we're not talking, let's say, sales strategy. We're not talking pricing strategy. We're talking pricing effectiveness. We're talking sales operational effectiveness. And so we tend to look in a few key areas. One would be, let's call it sales and marketing effectiveness. And, that gets into a whole slew of tools and options we have to drive process effectiveness and operational impact in a very short time frame. We also get into product and pricing and profitability, and that's sort of shifting the organization to a more margin mindset and better pricing governance, executing on portfolio rationalization, really driving immediate change to sort of think more carefully and in a more profit-oriented way about the products you're taking to market. And then customer value is sort of that last area. This is one that really interests me, customer value. What this is all about is a lot of companies have lost faith in their ability to get new customers. So they're saying, okay, right now in this market environment, we can't acquire a lot of new customers. How do we expand value with our existing customer base? How do we get better wallet share, drive down churn, drive up retention? And so we've had a lot of success in that as well. In one company it was a $30 billion media company carve-out, very big, complex carve-out. And we improved their revenue by $450 million in the first year alone. Yeah, huge impact just by programmatically addressing current customer base, retention, loyalty. And so these are sort of these tactical things that we go after in a very, sort of 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 quarters. And instead of thinking long term, we're thinking short term. And that starts to win over those heads of sales and the CMOs. And they say, okay, we see the value here. Let's maximize our bang for the buck on what we are spending versus just reducing staff.
Wow, good, awesome.
Yeah.
Did you have anything to add to that? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it kind of really gets into the right opportunity. We talked about it. And when you look at the pricing in downturn economy, we believe there's a major opportunity for sure.
Sure.
So we see a lot of increase in cost structure and rising interest rates, and we see a lot of companies raising their prices to offset the economic pressure. But I just want to iterate some of what he said, Jason, previously. And pricing effectiveness is a key thing, right? I mean, when you look at all the, a lot of people in our sales team, they like to discount too much because they want to hit the quotas, or they pricing the product ineffectively. So once you have the right pricing compliance setting up in the right way, such as setting up the right, governance structures or rigorous pricing stage gate, you can really mitigate disruptions, and the companies can better manage their pricing structures. And then I want to talk about the AI and artificial intelligence now. I mean, ChatGPT is a hot topic now in the market. And I know we also have AI-driven tool set to help the clients, but then there are specialized software vendors who can help the companies to make the pricing structure better and to drive the top line impact. And then I really want to highlight the last one is the customer segmentation and tier pricing. And people just blindly go after, hey, there's a pricing we're going to go after. But once you really understand the nature of your business, understand your customer behaviors, you may want to have a different tier pricing set, and then understanding their profitability really help you to drive what's the right pricing strategy that could really enhance your customer lifetime values. I mean, you may sound this becomes very, a theory approach, but Jason and I worked on a number of clients. And Jason, do you mind share some of the clients that we worked together? The SaaS company that about a few months ago, that's setting up the good compliance set, and that we are able to get a right revenue opportunity within the kind of first quarter.
No, great point. This brings to mind. It's funny, Terrence. There are a lot of these companies that we've been helping, and it's this cost out opportunity, and then we get in there, we start looking under the hood, and we actually start talking about these commercial opportunities. And so, to Yale's point, there's this one company we wrapped up with about 6 months ago, where it's a market-leading online training provider. So about 800 million in revenue. And
Nice.
really you can imagine online training, corporate training, demand is down, right? So they're struggling with reduced demand. So how do they maintain profitability? And as we started driving all these cost out opportunities, we started running analyses on pricing. And we found that there's this scatter plot that's a mess of prices all over the place, with salespeople reacting out of fear and just giving discounts all over the place for specific training to their corporate clients. And so that's having a real impact. So we it was a basic analysis, but we incorporated that into a governance model to put in place a new level of pricing compliance, and we empowered the pricing team to sort of own that governance.
Mm-hmm.
We report directly to the CEO. There was like a deal desk. We put in place these enforcement mechanisms, and 20 million top line impact in 90 days. 20 million impact in 90 days. Yeah. So they were, at that point, they were super excited. And so we started to broaden the discussion, but that's a good sort of tactical example of what Yale's talking about.
Wow, that's amazing. We talk about, clearly there's a lot of opportunity, in pricing and thinking about pricing effectiveness. So that's amazing. Is there ever a time, let me ask you about this, is there ever a time where it may be dangerous to raise prices during a downturn?
Well, let me just cover the question here. We
Sure.
all know that pricing is an essential element of any business, and that, however, just blindly raising price can backfire you. And the real danger is ignoring the pricing altogether. And sometimes, companies raise price too high, and sometimes they discount too much. But so it is crucial to understand the importance of profitability of customers and customers' perceived value to develop an effective pricing strategy. I talked about briefly before, but in the understanding the profitability of the products and customer perceived values, and people just don't have much visibility. They don't have much transparency either. On the other hand, if you look at winning companies, they utilize decision tools that take into account customer segmentation, both product and customer profitability, and other important factors to generate pricing increases. But then, you know what? Not just that, you also need to look into your macro and micro factors when that affects your business. But at the same time, you have to really raise your price to sustain your profitability. But just going back to my previous comment, please do not make pricing decision based on your subjective assessment or so-called gut feelings. And you also need to consider your competitor's pricing move to defend your market share at the same time. But then the last one is, you understand your kind of inward subjective assessment, but competitors move. The last thing is about your customer perceived values. Every buyer, they have mental buckets. And for example, I'm not going to spend more than $100 per my cell phone bills or cable fees. And same thing as your client, your customers. Truly understand your customer perceived value, you should be able to make informed pricing decision, which will help your business grow and succeed.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I'll add to that quickly.
Sure.
It's interesting, Terrence, because this really gets to a change in how organizations make decisions when it comes to changing prices in a rapidly evolving market, right? And so, yes, raising prices can be dangerous, but the fact is, we've seen a lot of companies taking advantage of better operational efficiency and sort of in the back office to give them more freedom to maybe cut prices if they need to, but maybe sometimes they come back with a more rational approach and say, in this particular segment, given what competitors are doing, given where we are, we can actually raise prices and get a little more value. And so both up or down, at least it's a rational, data-driven process. That visibility and that ability to make the right decisions is critical. And the common theme we see with our clients is they lack that one source of truth. They lack that one key point to say, okay, let's make a decision. And therefore, to Yale's point, they revert to anecdotes and fear. And another
gut feelings.
Yeah, totally gut feeling, and that's a real problem, especially when you're in this reactive state, right?
Sure.
And so companies get into this death spiral of just cutting costs and trying to cut their way to prosperity. Just doesn't work. You've got to be bold and going to the market with an informed proactive point of view on how you can respond. And that's easier said than done. That takes some real systems in place. It takes some process change and empowering the pricing team, empowering the leadership team to make those decisions, and not letting the sales team sort of react out of fear.
That's good. It's really good. When it comes to, I guess, being proactive and not acting out of fear, when it comes to the pricing teams can't succeed unless the sales force is on board, in most cases. How do you explain that? Like, how do you go about doing that, getting the sales force team on board?
Yeah, that's not always an easy journey, but we've gotten there because ultimately it's in their best interest once they realize that we'll keep the pricing team accountable to sustain pricing discipline and to really enforce the policies, but the sales team are accountable to drive performance and right. And so when you have that joint accountability, what we do then is we put in place some key capabilities and structures. One is, a pricing committee. So the key here is, and you're going to hear me say cross-functional a lot when I think about this, but the key is it's you have the governance and compliance on pricing that involves finance. It's got the product people. It's got the sales team in the same room, and their chief mission is how do we guard against revenue leakage? How do we avoid these missed opportunities? How do we not make decisions based on fear? Right. And so that pricing committee is key. The other thing is this revenue win room. Now, we used to call it revenue war room. We've now changed it to revenue win room as more positive, positive feel. But this is one that I've had a lot of luck with, regardless of the nature of the commercial engagement. I always like to put these in place, and this is basically another cross-functional group that they get together with the executive team, and they drive out the right questions across sales, marketing, finance, product, manufacturing. And what this is how do we, and you're not looking backwards. You don't want to look back and say, what did we miss in the last 2 months of this quarter? We change them to look forwards and say, okay, we've got 45 days left in the quarter. What do we do right now to optimize our revenue, our commercial performance, and the results of this coming quarter? So it's a proactive point of view. That takes the digital tools. Sometimes we've brought in some AI tools to do it as well. I could talk about that in a moment, but it gets, because AI has really become a real thing. But the bottom line is the pricing team has a voice there, and you're no longer and so easily empowered to just overrule basic pricing parameters. And because we can measure week after week, month after month, we can measure value lost from lack of compliance to pricing. That opens their eyes, right? That changes the conversation. And people who push back a lot more forcefully on the salespeople when they're saying, no, you can't give a 75% discount. There's no need to. Let's go to the table and give them the price that we need. And you'd be amazed how many customers don't walk away. It actually does work. And so that's a key structure to keep that in place and ultimately, to your question, keeping sales on board, that joint approach across functions, the visibility to executive management and the accountability, I think sort of gets the sales team in the right mindset, and they're a lot more cooperative and willing to kind of play ball as we go forward.
Can you just add one more point there, Jason?
Yeah,
please.
It's also a cultural shift. I mean, you look at past 5 years, economy is booming, everyone's just grow. They don't care about the pricing. And I can give you a hit or quota. And then what happened was a lot of sales guys start, giving a huge discount at different marketplace. Now the downturn economy, money is not cheap. And now people we're thinking about what's the right pricing tactics? What could be our right pricing strategy? And we often see a lot of times nowadays when we work with a lot of different clients, they start to building these global pricing committees or global pricing council to control the balance of what's better for different market, what's better for different customer segmentations. And you may think that, oh my God, setting up the committee on a governance structure is going to be a cumbersome work, but you can always start small. If you have a few people in the finance, sales, marketing, cross-functional teams sit together, we just launched a new global pricing council for my client right now. And then they start small, they run a small pilot and they see how that goes. They're going to test out a few different products. They can continue to grow and then evolve their pricing strategy.
Wow. Very detailed and very intricate, but it seems so simple, doesn't it? And I like the concept of a pricing win room,
Yeah.
that cross-functional concept of everybody coming together to really hone in on this topic and not just leaving it just to one department or just one team. So that's a
Yeah.
phenomenon in itself. Now, when it comes to the pricing team, how can they take the lead in this case?
Mm.
Like where do they take charge? How do they kind of initiate this conversation?
Yeah, that's a great point. And Terrence also, previous point, that cross-functional alignment is so key to keep this
Hmm.
sustainable, right? It is so, I can't just underestimate the value here, because it's they need to have that. They a lot of times you'll have silos and they're pointing fingers at each other,
Hmm.
and it gets nowhere, and everyone's blaming everyone else. That's why the top line's dropping. We see it all the time.
Hmm.
Uh, and so then, so to your question about pricing team taking the lead, so one is authority. And this is something some organizations shy away from, giving the pricing team authority. Why? Because often sales teams want to overrule that. They come back and somehow they have better intel than everyone else, and they say this customer he'll walk away if I go up 10%. It's just not going to work. Well, you have to sort of have this mechanism in place where a deal desk review, cross-functional discussion, have executive management involved in cases where maybe you're at a stalemate, get the
Hmm.
executive management involved. So giving that pricing team that authority to have those conversations in those deal desk reviews, especially for large enterprise accounts, or a meaningful change in the profit margin of a product or a service, they got to be empowered. So that's number one.
Hmm.
Now, tactically speaking, what does that mean? In real terms. So there are a couple of things they can do. One is in that decision life cycle. So when you think about pricing stages, you got price setting, you got price governance, and you have pricing execution, right? So along those three steps, setting, governance, execution, what role does a pricing team play in owning that and driving the policies and compliance? And how do they remain sustainable? That's the next question.
Hmm.
So that gets through, basically the chief revenue officer, or maybe even the CEO, if necessary, if it's that bad, is involved in approving and defining these policies and stages that the pricing team can kind of drive. And then the pricing team owns the execution tools, the bid price guidance tools, or discount guideline tools, or that scatter plot I mentioned of where people are discounting across the organization. They should own that, right? And then they should report on the trends, the exceptions, the good decisions, the bad decisions. They can own those reports, not the
Hmm.
sales team, right? Let the pricing team own that. And so they're reporting to the revenue win room. I almost said revenue war room. Uh, the revenue win room. They're reporting in those discussions. Okay, here are the bad prices that got out. Here's the value impact. Here are all the good decisions that we made. That's key for them to own that and drive that. And I think
Hmm.
if you give them that authority and you give them that ownership, we've had tremendous success with these pricing teams and having a real sustained role in helping to drive real improvement with the company.
Giving them power and giving them the authority to do, to lead that conversation, to execute. Um, Yale and Jason, I want to thank you so much for your time today. This is an amazing article. For the listeners tuning in, where can they access, this article or any more of your resources that you all may have, or just to learn more about you guys?
I appreciate it, Terrence. So if you Google HBR,
Hmm.
how to grow your top line in a down market, that's where you can find it. I think it's freely available on the web, at least for now, for a while.
Sure.
And we want to, I just want to say also, thank you for the opportunity to come on and share
Absolutely.
perspectives here. And to your point, if anyone wants to reach out with any questions or any thoughts, they could just Google my name, Jason McDannold or Yale Kwon. On LinkedIn, we're there. You can find us. We're happy to connect with folks and have a good conversation.
And you can also come to AlixPartners.com. We have an insight. There are a lot of different insights you can enjoy, and not just ourselves. There are a lot of our practitioners for a lot of good articles. You can have a good insight around it.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you so much, Yale Kwon and Jason McDannold. Thank you all so much. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, have a good one.